So The Nightmare Before Christmas is a movie that's really popular, and I don't get it.
I get it.
I don't get it.
Don't get me wrong, I really appreciate how much people love this movie, and man, do they love this movie. I think Jack Skellington has been on like every possible item known to man. We got to put the skinny Skellington man on the car seat cover, or why else would you buy it? Yay, economics. Still, I'm not one for an oversaturation of lore, you know, the mythology behind all of the stories. A Nightmare doesn't really have a lot of lore. Something I noticed though, which makes my disdain kind of more disdainy, some of the lore doesn't really make sense. And for those new, lore is like how the world is defined. Think Harry Potter, or maybe that's a bad example right now. Think Game of Thrones, or think Lord of the Rings. Tolkien hasn't done anything bad lately, right? He's dead, so I hope not. I'm not one for an oversaturation of lore. It's kind of putting the cart before the pony. You get it? Because I used to do pony videos, and now I do only sometimes. Let me backtrack. Most of the time when you're writing your fictional story about, let's say, a flying spaghetti monster, you have to think about the world and mythology that spaghetti monster lives in. Even if it's a modern day setting, for a story to feel natural, you have to explain where the spaghetti monster came from, or at least hint at it. How does the beginning of your story happen if spaghetti monster is your protagonist? How does this world work if it's another world? You don't have to be like Tolkien and write like a whole lore book thing, but a little explaining would help things. Many times sequels suffer from this problem when there's only enough background information for the first film's plot. For example, in Lion King 2, these enemy lionesses or whatever are never really introduced as a concept in the original film. There's no passing mention to enemy lions. The line seems pretty strict between the races here, even visually so. Well, not really. We've talked about this before, but like, where were they in the first movie?
Where were you?
Hiding.
Nightmare has much of this as a general problem. There seems to be something lacking in its initial setup to get immersed in the world. Take this line for instance.
Leave that no-account Oogie Boogie out of this!
This would imply some past history that we as the audience haven't seen yet on screen. Don't get me wrong, we don't need to see whatever Oogie did to get that reaction out of Jack, but how that dialogue is written seems kind of odd. The film has a lot of these instances that leave the worlds aesthetically interesting but lacking in some common sense elements that really make it feel organic. So maybe someone has to tell the world about it, and I guess it's up to me. Please don't send me mean comments. I'm trying to be constructive. Let's start by establishing an official timeline of the film and its canon and non-canon expansions so we can find what is definitely unexplored and what feels a little off, in order of events. So we have this video game prequel for the Game Boy Advance, I guess, remember those? Called The Nightmare Before Christmas, The Pumpkin King, which does explain the Oogie origins mentioned earlier, as well as establishing the rivalry between Jack and Oogie, hinted at in the actual movie, we just talked about it, pay attention. And another video game sequel called Oogie's Revenge, which sounds like exactly what it is. Oogie kidnaps Sally, and then he sends his Oogie army, or whatever, some skeleton dudes, to try to take over the rest of the town, and it's up to Jack to save the day with the sticky thing from the 90s, and it's green, and it's neat. It's like slime. There's also a sequel comic that came out, but it didn't really. It's pretty light, so it's there, but I'm not counting Kingdom Hearts as the official canon to this because even though it can technically coexist with the plot from the main movie in between the first and second Kingdom Hearts, the same timeline also retcons other Disney films, so it exists in its own space, but it does a good job of getting the original cast back. Almost.
Let's pop him in a boiling pot, and when he's done, we'll butter him up!
Yeah, I sure did. A heart. What should we do?
Not that any of the other official games are that better.
It's over! It's over! This time you've gone too far! It's over! I'm serious! Just who do you think you are?
We miss you, Danny Elfman. Now that we've got an official timeline structured, I'll put my nitpicks in order from least to greatest on how they both influence the plot and might pull some audience members away from the suspension of disbelief because these things are missing and it confuses me. AKA, how to lose yourself in film without questioning your surroundings. How believable is it? The worlds of these holidays are pretty Americanized. So how does that work? Is there like a planning committee or something that votes on how the holiday trees get planted or something. I'm not suggesting that displaying mostly American holidays is a bad thing, but it's a little off-putting if you consider not only the history of some of these holidays.
I am so glad we invited the Chippewas to join us for this holiday meal. Welcome to our table, our new primitive friends.
Oof. And I guess by the math of all that, the holiday worlds are roughly 300 years old or so. Maybe the ostracization of non-Christian and pagan holidays is a little bit off-putting. To Nightmare's credit, Christmas movies in general have a hard time balancing their lore while also being inclusive to other cultures. If Santa exists, does that mean Jesus does too, Mom? This gets a little more complicated when we add other holidays to the mix.
Excuse me, is this Hanukkah Town?
No, it's the Vatican, and I'm Pope Shlomo. Oi.
Look, I'm not saying we need a Festivus tree, but acknowledging some cultures even a little bit is helpful for those children who are crushed by Christmas time and feel left out. It's not so much of a fault with only Nightmare, but something to consider as our culture and media hopefully move to a more progressive side. Hopefully. So it's pretty clear what Christmas Town does to prepare for its holiday, but I'm a little lost in what the other worlds do for theirs. The opening song of the movie establishes the tone and the aesthetic of Halloweentown, but not really explicit job for what the town does in order to prepare for Halloween, or what they even do on that night. It's implied they go into the real world, if that's what we're calling it, and scare some humans and stuff, but it's a long stretch to assume that the holiday is dependent on their involvement, unlike Christmas Town. I guess we could have Christmas without Santa like Grinch style, but generally that's not the norm. So what's the town in charge of? Is their involvement critical to the holiday? I don't know, the movie never tells us. Going on the lack of real explanation to what the hell is going on in this place, not only are we as the audience are generally unclear about Jack's role. Yes, I know he's a pumpkin king.
What does that mean?
Jack is hinted to have once been alive, as well as having a greater role than most of the citizens in the town. So was Jack ever alive in the first place?
To a guy in Kentucky, I'm Mr. Unlucky, and I'm known throughout England and France.
And it's never really elaborated. That's a cool concept, but it brings to question the world dynamics when we have demons and monsters in general, as well as mythical creatures who've never been humanized to begin with. How'd they get there? Did, bad people get reincarnated in Halloweentown? The closest we get is Sally herself, who was created by another citizen made out of leaves. I assume other dead people, right? There's also a graveyard with its iconic spirally thing that's on everything, but we never really know if those are real people, or those graves are just for show, or if they're little apartments for the civilians or something. Someone better call the police on Sally. There's probably a mix of all the above. But that's just speculation. Jack wasn't willed into being as a skeleton himself, and I've seen the theory that Jack was the headless horseman of Sleepy Hollow, which adds up really well with the 300-year timeline. But this mess is also really confusing, considering what little we know about their creature creation in the world. I guess it's a little bit of chicken and egg, but did Finkelstein create the town by himself? Did Jack come into the town when he was already dead and it was fine? I don't know. I don't know. I'm so confused.
What does that mean?
Let me know in the comments what you think happened. So, what exactly is a Pumpkin King? Really? What does that even mean?
What does it mean? What does it mean?
What does he do? Does he plan the holiday? Is he primarily in charge of the town? Although we get some technical expansion about how Jack became the Pumpkin King via the Game Boy Advance game, by defeating Oogie that first time. We don't really know what that means, especially when the town itself already has a mayor.
I'm only an elected official here. I can't make decisions by myself.
You get it, two-faced politician? You get it? It's a joke. That's the joke. I know there's someone in the comments who're gonna be like, I just got that joke now, and I'm like, you're welcome. It's also confusing because, unlike Christmas, we don't have a defined mascot for Halloween. Okay, maybe Jack became the defined mascot as this movie became popular.
That is true.
But there was nothing established about something concrete before the film came out.
That is also true.
It's just confusing. Like, how are these guys contributing to Halloween? I don't understand. Just tell me what a Pumpkin King does. Just please tell me. I'm so confused. Just tell me what a Pumpkin King is.
What does that mean?
Lastly, there's an epilogue in the official soundtrack that talks about Jack and Sally's skeleton children. How did they figure that out? I don't think Jack is that kind of bone daddy. Ba-doop boop. He doesn't have any flesh. That's the joke. Don't make me explain it more than that, which isn't really relevant, but it's there. It's canon.
And there was old Jack, still looking quite thin, with 4 or 5 skeleton children at hand.
There you go. I guess it's interesting, but doesn't really add too much to the timeline of the canon. Thanks, Patrick Stewart, you were helpful. Regardless of the points that I brought up here, let it be known that I enjoyed the film regardless. I even have a Jack Skellington pajama piece, complete with slippers. It has his little face on him and everything. The film may not be my personal favorite, but as I mentioned in my original Treasure Planet video, go watch the video, it's good, and Treasure Planet if you haven't seen it. I know you have Disney Plus, don't make me come down there. Time can change how a film is perceived and even help preserve it when its original release is, lackluster, touchstone. And the company that is releasing it is slowly regretting their choices.
Back then, the Nightmare Before Christmas product was fine. It had a very niche market. And it took 3 years to finally get an okay to do it. It was terrifying because it was also the onset of the internet.
Crowds screamed with delight. The gutsy decision worked because an already familiar property resurrected the space into a fresh, scary, but fun experience. Not to mention, it was only temporary.
Due to its general aesthetic and appeal, the film has gained a popular fan base. That it's one of Disney's front and center brands. It's all over the theme parks during Halloween, all over the theme parks.
I like money.
Whether it be theme parks or just Hot Topic, or Spencer's a little bit. I'm not sure how Nightmare would have done if released today with some of these considerations. Maybe critics would have nitpicked it or something. And maybe it's best that we don't think about it too hard. But do these points make you think? Because they've always bothered me and it's made me kind of unsure about Nightmare in general as a whole. Do you think this is best explored via future canon installments, or is it best left to fan fiction?
Don't touch it!
I don't know the answer to these questions, but I'm asking them anyway. As someone who isn't really too attached to the Nightmare franchise, how do you think it's best if we explain this, if at all? Tell me in the comments and I might read them, and if you're new, subscribe, please. And that's all, folks, except it's not time for the ending gag.
It sparkles and shimmers, it shines and delights. I must have it for my nest.
So you're the one everybody's talking about.
You got bugs!
Urine of the horsefly, 3 coins from a dead man's pocket, 2 teaspoons of wishful thinking.
I'm Mr. King Dice. I'm the gamest in the land. I never play nice. I'm the devil's right-hand man.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you saw, please remember to leave a comment and share this with a friend or 2 or 5. Click here to subscribe, we really appreciate it. Click here to check out the main collaborator for this video. Click here to check out our video playlist for this video, where you might find similar videos that hopefully you like and enjoy. There's also a credit scroll here, where you can check out all the other awesome contributors. All their info is in the description. That's all I gotta say, KPOA!